What's up everybody? In today's video I'll be making part 2 of TypeScript Todo tutorial. If you haven't seen that, make sure to check it out. So this video is based on this comment, and we'll be adding editing and deleting functionality to our to-dos. So let's get started. As a reminder of what we built in the previous part, here we have a to-do where we can add different to-dos, and it shows up as a list, and then we can check it off. So for this we can create a new component. I'm gonna name this dropdown. And in this dropdown, we'll create a basic React component, and then what we'll do is it will print out the list of functionality that we'll give. So two options, edit and delete. And since this is also in TypeScript, we need to pass in the types for the component, which I'm gonna do it later on. Here, create a new div tag, give it a class name, I'll do the typings afterwards. And here just create another tag for the title. I'm gonna name it dropdown for now. And what we can do, let's go here to the to-do list item and add the dropdown from there, so we are able to see it on our screen. And I'm gonna add it below the input that we have. Okay, let's go reload now. We can see the drop down here. Let's go back to the styling page and add some styling to it. I'm gonna add a comment for this section, drop down styling. And I'll update this to be flex justify content space between, because we want the drop down to be all the way to the right. So this drop down would also basically be just a button that would open the drop down. So let's do position, give it relative. Display would be inline block. Text align, let's do all the way on the left. And one more thing, let's go back to the to-do list item, and instead of having label as a flex element, let's update the list item to be itself like the flex. So I'm gonna rename the class name, move it up here. Okay, it's looking good now. So next thing we'll be doing is defining types for props for our new drop-down item. So let's name in drop-down item props, and what this will take, it will take an icon, which I'll pass it will be optional for now, and I'll pass the path for the icon later on. And next thing we want here is options, as in what are we passing as a list. So it would be array, and we'll define a new type and name it option. So I'm going to go back here in the types and define type option, because I'll probably need this type later on, so it's better for define in our global types.dts file. So it would have a value string, which will be displayed as a text, and then we need onClick function. So what should happen when we press and select the drop down option? I'm going to also pass it on color. Optional, this would be the color of the text. Let's move back to the drop down item and pass this newly defined type that we just created. And I'm gonna add some destructuring here. And let's also add a container for the list. So div class name drop down list container, and inside here we're gonna map out the options. So options.map option. See, here we need that option type, so we don't have to redeclare it. It's automatically imported from the types file. So let's return a button, and let's pass the value to the button. So it would be option.value. And since we're calling this from a drop-down list item, what we would have to do is we would have to create these options over there and then pass it on to the drop-down. So let's go ahead and do that. Constant drop-down options, and here we have, again, using our type that we created, array of the option. This is array since we have more than one option, so let's create that. So first one would be, as I mentioned, delete. And also the function for the onClick. So we don't have this function yet, so I'm gonna also declare that right here. Might as well. So constant on delete. So I'm gonna leave it as console. This function is empty now. The reason being is that we do need to pass it. The function is required, but I'm gonna come back and update it. So also we need on edit, so let's might as well create that. Console log edit. And now we can pass both of these functions here. On delete. So the color for this one, I'm gonna do red. And let's do the next one. And this will be blue. Okay, let's pass it on this options to drop down now. So drop down options equals drop down options.
Sorry, I don't have any information about that, but I found something else.
Okay, Google,
Do you want to know
stop.
what option is used to drop down?
Okay, Google, because we need to fix that part. All right. Okay, so let's see. We have to do here. We're gonna add a to do, enter. So yeah, we see the two buttons here. Let's add a little bit of styling so they don't look so old school anymore. So below the drop down, I'm gonna add drop down list container styling before, because this container, we want it to be always displayed below the drop down item, so it has to be relative to the parent. So transform original, that's why I defined the parent's position as relatives, so that this would be absolute. Add some padding into it. Let's just do this, and it has to be all the way on the right. So that, and add some margin at the top. Let's do 20, not 2 rem, and border radius, let's make it a little bit rounded, so 0, 3, 6, 5, right. And box shadow, so that since it's the background is white, we can differentiate it from the rest of the component. Alright, and now let's do some styling for the button itself. So let's go to the drop down, add the styles here. So it would be class name equals to drop down list button, and move back on here, drop down list button. Let's remove that background color and also the border that it has, so it looks like a list item actually and not like a button. Add some padding also, 30 pixels. And also on hover, let's make it a little bit darker. So background color. And as we did the option for displaying the red for the delete and blue for the edit. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, we have these two options displayed below the drop down. Now let's go back to the file and make this drop down clickable, as in when we press it, it's gonna open, and when we press it again, it's gonna close. So in order to do that, we need to go back to the drop down component. Here we need the state management to know like when it's open, when it's closed. So I'm gonna import useState in useState hook. Open set is open equals to useState, and this would be a boolean. So we pass in the type and initial value, it's false. And we need another function that's gonna like update this. So drop down toggle equals, and it will just set set is open to opposite to what it was before. So if it was true, it would set it to false, and the other way around. And to use, we declare the function, but we need to use it now. So on the drop down, the title, we're gonna say when on click, toggle this. And this container itself would be optional. So that's why we created the state, right? To manage whether or not we're displaying this container. So if it is open, and show it. So let's try it out. So if we add another one and we press it, it shows when we hover it that the color is darker. Okay, now let's work on the edit and delete functionality itself. So if you remember from the last time, the way we managed to-dos was inside this app.tsx file. Here we have the state for it, so we would have to also create files to remove a to-do item and add a to-do item from here. So doing that right now, remove to-do, and for this type we're also going to create a new type later on, so this would show a red error for now. So, and then we would have to pass the to-do that we want to delete. Remove. Okay. And so we're gonna take the existing list, which is also of type to-do, so array to-do, and so filter out based on remove the element that we just passed. So, and the way we're gonna find this element is if its text is same as the text of the one we are on right now, then remove it. And then we'll update this list in our state. Almost the same logic for the edit, so we do find the one which has the same text, and then what we do is we also update the to-do instead of removing it. So just because we can't directly update the state, we need to use set state hook. That's why I'm first creating a new list and then passing on that list to the states hook. So to-dos find index, so we're gonna find on which index is this on. And then let's just console log this index for now, just to make sure that it is working. And let's define the types that we just talked about. So it was two types for the two functions. So remove to-do as an argument, it's gonna take the to-do item that we are removing. We already have a type for that, so we don't need to redeclare, and void because it does not return anything, it just manipulates the state. Same thing for edit to-do, it's passing on an argument to-do to edit, also to-do, and it's also return type is void. So now we should not be getting any error. Coming back here in the app.typescript file, and to pass these functions on, because we are in app.typescript file, we need to add on extra props to this component. So we just pass it on all the way down to the drop-down element where we actually need to call this function. So same thing here, I'm gonna add on remove to-do, edit to-do, and also in the to-do list item, because to-do list item is actually the container, like parent container of the drop-down. So one more place in here. And inside the to-do list item, we do the same thing. And we also needed to add it to our arguments list, not only the types. So make sure don't forget that. So in here we already have this on delete and onEdit functions created. We're just gonna update them and pass them the function that's coming down from the props. So there's two places here. And this is giving error because we did not pass it on. Okay, so in here, if we, let's say, and then one more thing that we have to do is in the button itself, we never pass the function to call the option on click. So go back to the drop down and here the button element that we have. And in here, let's add on click equals to option.onClick. So let's come back here, and once we reload that, add the to do again, and we press the delete, it's gone. So on the edit, we want the modal, the drop down to close, right? Because they already have, users have already selected that option. On delete, we don't need that because the component itself disappears. So modal, the drop down is automatically closed. But let's add that conditional statement only on the edit. So the way we can do that is here. We can create another function, let's say constant drop down click equals to, so we pass it on the option, and based on this option we're saying, oh, like check if it is the edit, then please also close the drop down. So equals to edit, and since we have the function as a hook, so state hook, we can just use that. And also for the others, just make sure that the option on click is fired. So and then we pass it on this newly created function to our button here, which also has to pass option as a drop as an argument. So okay, moving on from here, another thing that edit needs is that when somebody presses edit, we want them to be able to type it in what exactly is, update the text of the to-do. So for that we need two things. First is the state to store if somebody had edit pressed already. So for that I'm gonna create this boolean type state that is also false initially, and also once user types in the new text, we need to track that as they're typing. So that would be set input text, and that's of type string. Initially it's set to do text because we don't want them to start updating from the blank. We want them to start updating what it was there before. So here we also have to create an input component. So if they press edit, then let's display that input component. So give them the option to update it. Type equals text and value equals input text, the state that we just created. So if the edit is on, then just display this input box. If not, then also on chain typing it gets updated, it takes in the event, and let's have a separate function for updating this and define it here. Constant on to do update. So it takes in the event. I'm gonna define it as type of any now for now. I believe it should be a button click, so it takes in the text from this event. And it also sets the state, so set input text of this text. And it also calls the edit function that we passed on, so that it makes sure that the to-dos list that's in app.tsx that gets updated. So continuing the functional conditional statement here, if it's not an input, then just display to-do text. And one more thing that we have to do is that when somebody selects edit, we need to make sure that that updates the state. Okay, so let's, instead of, now I have manually like typed drop down, but instead of that, let's add an icon, which I was thinking to have like a 3 dots icon, kind of looks like a settings one. So I usually use this react icon, so you can copy this statement here, add it to your project root. So let's do that, and let's remove the drop down text from here and pass it on the icon. So pasting it here again and close the text. So yep, it looks cleaner this way. So we press it, we open this up, and let's update a little bit more styling. So this container, we actually see that it's a separate container. I think the box shadow should be, oh, I had the typo. Okay, yeah, we can see now that it's a little bit different. Let's update a little bit of, and let's add the width so that on hover, when it becomes darker, it doesn't have that white padding on the right side. So that should be it. So this is it. This is our to-do component with added functionality of edit and delete, which also what we created to put this functionality in was a drop-down component. So 3 things to summarize, and thank you so much for watching this. In the next tutorial I'll be making is TypeScript, but I'll be adding for the state management Redux. So make sure to subscribe to watch that.